Welcome to the Ground and Pwn Podcast, a weekly show for fans of combat sports, gaming, entertainment, and plenty more. I'm Brian Shea, online content director at Game Informer, joined by Scott Fontana, the New York Post's MMA reporter. We are coming off a rare week where both the gaming and fight worlds are lacking in major events and news, but we do have a few big talkers, and then we will see what else carries us through the show. But in particular, we have a lot of gaming and media crossover talk today. But first, Scott, how are you doing? And more importantly, how did you spend a Saturday night without UFC?
Yeah, it was weird. Not just UFC. There was no major MMA going on, like North American MMA going on at all Saturday night. So it was weird. There's no Bellator because Bellator was Friday night, or I guess Friday afternoon, evening over in the States, right?
Yeah.
And then no UFC. So it was weird. But I'll tell you, I could not escape UFC. Because I went to, my town had the annual day, how every town has this day, right?
Every town has a day. My town, I think, does it in July, if I'm not mistaken.
That's an interesting time. I feel like my hometown where I grew up, they did it in early September. This town where I live now, they also used to do it in early September, and then the pandemic changed it, so now it's more like late September.
Pandemic
so we
changed
had ours.
Everything.
We had ours on Saturday. Yeah, it ruined everything. Exactly. Actually, it used to be a really big thing. Now it's much different. So it really did ruin it. Which is really unfortunate. But
it's really a silver lining to the whole pandemic thing. Ruined town
there's no
days.
silver lining. This was. I don't want to trivialize. But anyway, yeah. So I was at our town day, and I'm walking through, and I'm like, it's kind of lighter. There's not too much here. But even though there wasn't a whole lot there, we still had representatives from the local UFC gym.
Oh, there you go.
Standing there with the championship belt on their shoulder. And,
who was it? Was it Aljo?
No, it was not Aljo.
Was it Frankie bringing out his old belt?
No. I'll tell you who it was. No one.
Oh, well.
Just some rando.
You can't just buy those belts. Where do they get them?
No. You can buy those belts.
Oh, that's right.
That's the funny
can.
thing. Yeah. Yeah. I think, if I recall, I think John Jones has said that's the one item that he won't sign or anything like that because he doesn't like that people can go buy it, but he had to earn it. Which on some level I understand, but on another level, get off the high horse.
Yeah,
and accent on high.
He's just mad that he didn't think of that first. Instead of devoting his life to becoming a fighter to earn those belts, he just should have gotten a part-time job and bought one for what it was $1,200.
Well, I mean, fighting was basically a part-time job for him, and up until the point he won the championship because he got up there so quickly, right?
Yeah. Wasn't his nickname at first Sexual Chocolate or something?
Maybe before the UFC. He was
before
by the
Bones.
Time he got up this point, he was already Bones.
I'm gonna look that up because that was one of my all-time favorite. It's up there with Beastin 25-8 in terms of.
I mean, it's fun, but it's also taken. He's just borrowing it from Mark Henry.
I'm trying to figure out what it is here, but yeah. So the UFC guys were there at the gym. It was Sexual Chocolate, by the way.
Okay.
The UFC guys were there.
He borrowed from Mark Henry.
So were any actual UFC fighters kind of manning the booth?
No. It was just that, you know how at this point the UFC gym naming or their little business here, it's gotten so pervasive that it's kind of just a normal boring thing.
Yeah, it's just a franchise at this point.
Yeah. Which to me is so weird because it's man, the UFC used to be this almost this counter thing, right? They were on the rise and people who you had to love it to watch it, right? This is even before I got into it, right? And then it started getting popular and everything like that, but it was still kind of this thing that was maybe on the outskirts of what people were talking about, but it was kind of cool to talk about. And now it's just this mundane representation at your town's day.
This is when you're out at the grocery store and they start playing Green Day's Good Riddance Time of Your Life.
Yeah.
You're just wow, this used to be you would never imagine hearing Green Day in the grocery store before that song.
Sure. It's the times they are changing.
Yeah. Well, that's Bob Dylan.
No, it's true. And that's older.
But anyway,
Ron Burgundy had never heard that song.
I don't know that reference.
Oh, it's from Anchorman.
Yeah, well, I assumed.
There you go.
So I went to a party. You may have seen the pictures on Twitter. My Saturday was spent. First of all, I did a taco tour throughout a part of Minneapolis. That was very good. Supported some local businesses, ate some delicious tacos, and then I also supported a local business and got a slice of pizza on the way out, which is actually one of the better slices of pizza I've had in the Twin Cities since I've lived here.
Okay.
So
I would never touch it because, as you know, I'm a pizza snob. So I will only eat pizza that's in like the tri-state area over here, New York, New Jersey, and I guess maybe Connecticut.
I will say this was definitely New York style that I had, and I have eaten a lot of New York style pizza in my day. This was definitely up there with an average slice of New York pizza.
I'm skeptical.
All right.
But hey, if you enjoyed it, that's wonderful. But I'm going to be a snob about it. I'm just going to be a snob.
That night, I went to a party of one of my girlfriend's friends, and it was themed after reggaeton, the music genre.
Sure.
And so I dressed up in kind of hipper clothing than I normally wear. Mm-hmm. So that was a fun time.
Did you go around telling people that you were hip?
No, I definitely,
because that is hip.
It was. No, I just have an injured hip. That's all that I have.
Ooh, yeah.
So I was, I was out doing that, there was kind of an odd drink selection. So I was trying to look at the ingredients they had just laid out on the table. So it was just a party in one of those party rooms in an apartment complex.
Right.
And but it was decorated really well, and they had a DJ and everything. So it was a fun party and everything. But they had kind of just a random smattering of drink ingredients. And I was like, all right, well, what are we going to do here? So I ended up making makeshift pineapple margaritas. It was such a weird, it took me forever to find the tequila because there was no tequila. It was only gin and vodka. So I was just all right, well, I guess I'll just have some of this. And then I spotted underneath the table, there was a bottle of tequila. And I'm like, all right, now I can work with this.
Now it's a party.
Yeah, now it's a party. But it was a good Saturday overall. So
because I saw a lot of people on MMA Twitter, right? I saw a bunch of people kind of being like, well, what are we supposed to do with our lives now? And, it got me thinking, and I'm like, we wouldn't have had that problem years ago. I think we knew what to do with ourselves, but now the UFC has taken over so many weekends and made people just Saturday is just fight day. You don't have a life anymore, except for the days where we don't have any use for you, so we take a break, and then everyone's like, what am I supposed to do? It's what am I supposed to do with my hands? I don't know what I'm supposed to do with them.
The UFC, it's a strange phenomenon because the UFC has trained us to look forward to these fights every single Saturday night, right?
Right.
What is there, 10 weeks in the year that we don't get a fight card? Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of people being all right, well, yeah, I'm just so conditioned to care about these fights week in, week out. And I schedule my life around it. I've become the opposite way. The Co-Main Event podcast, an amazing show. Ben Foltz and Chad Dundas do an incredible job.
I don't know who that is.
And
now Chad and Ben are great.
Yeah, they're awesome. And they have coined a term for what we are in right now, and pretty much what we've been in ever since the ESPN era really started, maybe even before that, the just some fights era, where they know that they have to put out a fight card theoretically on average every week. And
more often than not.
There's going to be one fight that you're probably interested in at the top, and then the rest of them are just some fights.
Yeah.
And, there's going to be some names you recognize. We've talked about it several times on the show. There's going to be some names you recognize, maybe not their opponent. You don't know who they're fighting, but it's oh, this guy's fighting on that card. I know that guy. I saw him fight a couple times in these other cards. Oh, who the hell is he fighting? I don't know. He doesn't have a Wikipedia page. And so all that to say, it's almost trained me to be more apathetic towards the standard fight night cards, where it's I used to schedule my entire social calendar around these fight cards, and
even
now
the fight nights,
even the fight nights, and especially during the ESPN era, I have gotten to the point where it's oh, there's a fight card tonight. If I have nothing else going on, hell yeah, I'll sit down and watch all 8 hours of it or whatever it is. But if I have something even minimally interesting to do, and it's not a must see, when it was Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez, I was I have to watch that live. That's going to be
fantastic. And it was also middle of the day. You still had your evening.
Yeah. So those types of things, if it's a main event that I'm dying to see, I'll make an appointment for it. But almost everything else, I'll catch up on it later, or I'll just catch the highlights on Twitter. And unless it's like a big pay-per-view. And a big pay-per-view, I'll definitely block off most Saturdays. I mean, sometimes there's unavoidable stuff like a wedding. Like I can't reschedule the wedding.
Isn't that avoidable though? I mean, you can RSVP. No.
You can just, not have friends, and that I've tried that, but unfortunately my girlfriend has friends, so I have to go to those.
That's the worst.
So yeah, I mean that it's weird how like a lot of people are like, yeah, the UFC just gotten me conditioned to looking forward to a fight card every single Saturday night. And now it's like a habit at this point. For me, it's kind of pushed me towards like, all right, there's always another fight card that I'll be able to watch, and if I miss this one, it's no big deal.
I think. I don't disagree with that. I mean, that's absolutely true. And you're saying obviously the CME guys have kind of pointed that out as well. And it's not really a surprise to anybody that we're kind of at this point, right? What I'd love to do at some point, because I like to kind of do research like this, like little projects. I want to go back and look at, like, let's say, the fights during, let's say maybe the tail end of the Fox era, where they started to build up to a significant number of cards, and like almost a similar number as they have now, somewhere in the 40, like 38 to 40, 42, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to see how many, let's say, like top 100 fighters were on each of these fight night cards in particular, right?
That would be so challenging to do, just because we would have to look at where they were at the time. Because if you look back at some of these cards, it's like, oh my God, Khabib was on the undercards. Like, yeah, because he wasn't Khabib yet.
But that's the thing. What I like to do is I'll shout out a website that I use for this. It's called fightmatrix.com. And they do kind of, I guess there's some sort of algorithm they have that essentially ranks fighters, right? But they also, you can go back and look at rankings from like at the time, or they will give you like a generated rankings based on how things were at that moment too. So I can have that, snapshot of the moment, right? And I think that would be fascinating to do, and just kind of go back and let's say, okay, let's just see how many of them were on that card. And I think it would be interesting to see. I would love to know if there is a distinct like dip in terms of the number of, top 100 is very general too, but I think you could find somewhere in there where it's like maybe doing some research. I love projects like this. I'm crazy. I love data driven like deep dives and things. So,
oh, you're talking to the guy who tried to. God, what was the project I was trying to do? I was trying to see, because this was like March 2017 when we were like, oh my God, there are so many video games coming out right now. Like, this is the craziest March like we've ever had.
Yeah,
and somebody pointed out on the Game Informer staff, like, oh no, like Marches are usually pretty busy actually. And I'm like, really? Like it never feels this busy. So I went every year, I think 15 years back.
Okay.
And I looked at the Metacritic scores of every single game released in February, March, and April, and compiled like how many were like above this number, how many were above this number, like how many were above 80, how many were above 90, how many were above 95. And I was like, it got to the end of it, and I was like, oh, I guess you're right. Like maybe this March is a little busier because there's a console launch in it. It was when the Switch came out. But overall, it's like this February, March, April, like 3-month stretch is not that busy comparatively.
Okay.
But then, like, in retrospect, we look back and we're like, all right, well, that month, those 3 months gave us like Breath of the Wild and Nier Automata and Persona 5. So it's like, yeah, we have 3 of the most beloved games of the generation coming out in a 2-month stretch. So,
but also, especially with some of these titles that, I think people were anticipating some of them to. Zelda obviously was through the roof anticipation because it also came along with the Nintendo Switch itself, but would have nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
Nier Automata, excuse me, and Persona 5. Like, yes, people really love those games, and I think there was certainly a sect of the fan, gamers that would love those games coming in, but also they just weren't nearly the same hype level. You know what I mean?
I would say Persona was higher coming in because it was out in Japan for a year before that, and everybody knew, like, oh my God, this game rules.
Sure.
However, and Persona 4 Golden was probably the most beloved RPG on Vita. Like, remember the Vita?
Yeah, I have my Vita. I like my Vita.
Yeah, that was probably the most beloved RPG. It was a re-release of a PS2 game, but it was still like, oh my God, they made this so much better. And I remember the internet was just ablaze with love for that game when it came out on Vita. But yeah, you're right. It reached new heights when it launched in the U.S. At least in my circle, anecdotally,
Sure.
because I don't have a ton of friends who are over in Japan gaming and like talking about games.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, to get all the way back to the point of kind of the idea that yes, these cards are getting a little more watered down, and it is just some fights. I think they're on point. The CME guys, yeah, it is the just some fights area. But at the same time, I think the ESPN is probably very happy about it because they have a reliable content that they can put out there, and there's a distinct like bottom basement that they're going to get in terms of people who will watch fights any Saturday. What I wish they would do is start putting on more of them in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah,
I would love to see how that would actually fare, because I think, at least for me, I like when I have some afternoon fights, and then you could like, I don't even go out on Saturday nights anymore because I work. But if it was me when I was younger, I would love it if it was like an afternoon kind of card, and I was done by let's say 6-7 o'clock or something like that, and then I could go out and do things, be a young guy like doing fun things. Like I'm talking like someone who's 15 years older than his prime, because I am. But it would just be nice to do that. I would like to see if they could fare better and maybe get a younger audience that way.
You would hope so. I mean, I think that would be. I mean, but also does that kill the bar scene? Like people going out to bars to watch, which I don't know.
Not when it's a pay-per-view.
Yeah, it's true.
You do pay-per-views at night. I get it. That's premium content. That's like get people to go out. That's get people buzzing, and it makes it very distinctive from one product to the other, right?
Now, is 282 an afternoon pay-per-view?
280, you mean?
Yeah, 280. Sorry, I was.
Yeah, no, it's the one coming up in October.
Yeah, Oliveira Makhachev.
My understanding is that it is. I don't know that for a fact, but typically now that when they go to Abu Dhabi, that is the one spot in the whole world where they say, okay, we're going to do it local time. And I'm pretty sure that is some sort of stipulation of working with the people in Abu Dhabi.
I'm liking it. I'm seeing the main card starts at 1 p.m. Central. So that is 2 p.m. your time.
2 p.m. Eastern.
2 p.m. Eastern. That gets me excited. It's October 22nd.
October 22nd.
Marking that on my calendar. I'm going to have.
We are 4 weeks away.
Daytime fights, baby.
Mm-hmm. Daytime premium fights.
Actually, hopefully I'm not jet lagged, because I'll be getting back from an overseas trip around that time. So I think 2 days prior to that. So, I mean, a daytime fight card might be either a very good thing for me or a very bad thing for me.
Well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You gotta figure out a way to. You gotta if you want something, you gotta be consistent in wanting it. You can't just be like, well, it doesn't fit for me this week. Let's do it another time.
Well, I'm saying, getting off an overseas trip from probably a 15-hour flight is going to be tricky.
What if you just stopped in Abu Dhabi on the way home?
Oh, that's even further. It's not on the way home,
but it would be a lot of fun.
It would be. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna see if. I'm going to hit up Habib and see if he has an extra ticket for his team.
That could be. Yeah. Just call him up on your little celly phone.
But hey, I was there for your Hall of Fame induction.
Meet him for a burger cheese, and
burger
you guys
cheese.
can hang out. Yeah.
Hey, burger cheese is on me, buddy.
Dude.
How can you say no?
I would love to have a cheeseburger with him. That would be fun.
Although, if it's anything like his Hall of Fame speech, he's just going to ramble incoherently for 30 minutes and just read Ali's notes that he gave him.
Good. That's fine.
Man, that was a rough Hall of Fame induction speech.
Hey, you know what? The man's a fighter, not a speaker.
That's true.
And he's speaking in not his native language.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's be fair, sir. And he can also beat your butt. Oh
yeah, of course. Literally any fighter in the UFC could beat my ass.
But this one
in particular,
one's different.
Yeah, one of the most dominant fighters in UFC history. I'm sure he could smash me. All right, so this card that's coming up this weekend. It is UFC Fight Night, Mackenzie Dern versus Yan Xiaonan. And that's a good fight in itself, I think. I think this is...
It's interesting enough.
It's a strawweight bout with some actual stakes. I think that whoever wins this is going to be in the title conversation once that gets a little bit less muddy. We have Esparza defending against Zhang Weili. Jeez, why couldn't I find that name? And... I think the winner of this would be in a good position to maybe fight the winner of that fight. But then Rose is always lurking as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think they would love to get Mackenzie Dern in position for her to get the championship title shot, but like also it is very crowded. Marina Rodriguez is definitely in the mix there, and to me, I think she's got to be the next in line if she can win. And her fight is, I believe, she got somebody coming up next.
But also, I mean, I think there's a winning thing for each fighter. Yeah, there's something in each fighter's favor. Jeez, I'm having a hard time with my words today. It's a good thing I'm not
Marina Rodriguez, by the way.
Not
did
the
I say
words
Michelle
business.
Rodriguez?
No, you said Marina, I think.
Okay, good, because I was thinking to myself, did I just say the actress?
Because like, the UFC has also been very, I think, transparent about wanting to get more into the China business.
Sure.
And Zhang Weili is obviously a big part of that. But
I mean, we were talking a bit about that too when Song Yadong was fighting last time.
But if Yan Xiaonan has a big win over a name like Mackenzie Dern, like that would be a big boost to her profile. And then also she has the most populated country on the planet behind her.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, I think it's pretty transparent what they would really like to come out of this fight. But
agreed.
The funny thing is, though, because this is obviously, it's a UFC Saturday. UFC's back that we've been talking about. But this is one of the rare times where Bellator also has a Saturday event. And I'm going to be honest with you. We have to debate the merits about which of these cards is more interesting, because it's a very serious threat to be a better, let's say, main card, especially on the Bellator side compared to the UFC.
I think... Let me go back to the UFC, because I don't think that there's.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask you, because you're not the person covering the sport. You're the guy watching the sport. Excuse me. But what of the other fights on the main card are you like?
Of UFC.
Wow, that's a good fight.
Of UFC.
Yeah, UFC.
Well,
I don't want to hear all the fights. I just want to know what actually jumps out at you.
According to Tapology, this is not on the main card, but
don't worry about them. Tapologies doesn't always have the right order.
Alexei Olenek versus Alira Latifi. I think that could be fun.
I think it'll be interesting, because literally anytime Alexei Olenek steps into the cage, there's a chance for an Ezekiel choke, which I like.
Randy Brown versus Francisco Trinaldo jumps
I like
off.
that fight too. What else?
I like Sadiq Youssef.
But what about his opponent?
I'm not familiar. It's the same situation I was talking about before, where it's like, oh, I like this one guy, but I don't know who he's fighting.
Exactly. I feel like you're kind of grasping now, right? It's starting to be like, okay, I don't know. So we're at that point, right? Switch over to Bellator. Just look at Bellator's
I like Tabitha Ricci.
Yeah, sure. I mean, she's
fighting
interesting
Jessica
too.
Penne.
Baby Shark, yeah, and I don't know what Jessica Penne, I don't think has a nickname, but if she did, it would be Pasta.
It should be. No, she does not have a nickname, according to Tapology.
No.
But okay. Bellator, I mean...
Bellator 286 here, yeah.
The top 4 cards has somebody that I want to see. Especially, I mean, Juan Archuleta versus Enrique Barzola is a good fight.
Barzola is a UFC veteran, too.
Aaron Pico. I'm not familiar with Jeremy Kennedy, honestly.
Jeremy Kennedy's been kind of on the come up in Bellator. It's like an appropriate matchup for Aaron Pico, which we need to be happy that they're actually appropriately matching up Aaron Pico at this point. Because they just destroyed his momentum as best as they possibly could for years, and now they're actually treating him like a prospect who's they're matching him up right. It's really great. So those two fights I like. We're not even at the main event, by the way. You haven't named the main event.
AJ McKee and that weird guy
Spike Carlisle.
What a weirdo.
Yeah. That is a weird guy, absolutely, but also a fascinating fight, because AJ McKee is a top, and he's moving up to 55.
So that's definitely a really interesting fight. But then you have Pitbull versus
Patricio
Adam Borics.
Pitbull. There are two Pitbulls, sir.
Yeah, I know this,
but not everybody knows.
Patricky's fighting Nurmagomedov next.
That's right. But hey, our listeners, we got to help our listeners, buddy.
We got two Pitbull champions here.
That's right. It gets honestly, if I was not immersed in things and I heard that there were two people whose last name was Pitbull, my first question would be their last name is Pitbull? And then my second question would be well, are they brothers? They're champions together? And the fact that they're both named, there's Patricio and Patricky, right? So
yes.
When you follow sports and you see a first name abbreviated, usually they'll go all the way up until it changes, right? Maybe you'll get 2 or 3 letters that'll be the same. They're the same, Patric, all the way through.
Yeah, it's very, very close.
Very
Now we just
confusing.
need Andrei Arlovsky to win the heavyweight title in Bellator, and then we'll have 3 Pitbull champions.
But, he had his day. He still counts, except he didn't go by Andre Pitbull. That was the problem.
No, that would be great, though.
Yeah.
It was like when Paulo Costa went by Paulo Bohashinia.
I wish he still was. I don't like that he's the eraser anymore. It's less cool.
But yes,
way less. I know it's the same word. I get that, but it's not as cool.
Also, Max Roshkov, the guy Roshkov. Unfortunately, the guy who's known for saying that he was done in the middle of a UFC fight.
Well, not in the middle. It was after round 2.
Yeah, it's middle.
I know. I mean, you're right.
But yeah,
it's in the middle.
not the middle of a
he
round.
didn't just walk off in the middle like, no, Moss, I'm good.
No, but that's unfortunately what he's known for mostly. But he's getting another shot here in Bellator. He's on this card, and
he's on the prelims and everything. But what we named here, those 4 fights are the Bellator main card. That's a solid 4-fight main card. I really like that. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know where you sit, but I think Bellator has the better, stronger main card.
So since we do this as we always do this for UFC fight nights where we gave it a 5-star rating, should we do this comparatively? Like do one for the UFC main card or one for the UFC card and one for the Bellator card?
Sure, yeah. We'll just do the main cards for this exercise. Once you get into the Bellator prelims can be pretty tough because not everybody's really going to know who a lot of these people are. Right?
I don't know hardly any of them.
I will tell you that these Bellator prelims are filled with a lot of people who are actually on the Bellator roster as opposed to what they used to do, which is, they would, maybe you don't know, they would often make
local
agreements
people
with local promoters, and they would get some kind of, maybe there'd be a couple guys who were on it that fought 1-0, 2-0, that kind of thing. And it really wasn't that much of a thing. Now they actually have their roster filled out enough to the point where they typically, not always, but typically they will fill it out with full Bellator fighters. But nonetheless, let's stick to the main
cards and the main event.
And the main event
for each one.
Let's rate the main events first because that's how we usually do it, right? So let's start with UFC.
Okay,
they are the bigger brand. It's You can't escape that. But rate Mackenzie Dern versus Yan Xiaonan as far as your interest level.
Oh God, I toyed with the idea of giving it a 3. I'm going to give it a 3.5.
I'm giving it only a 3. I'm going to stick with the 3. Actually, it's not that I dislike either of these fighters, and Mackenzie Dern. By the way, I've interviewed Mackenzie Dern, and she is and I'm not the first one to point this out. I want to say it was John Hyun Ko, reporter over in South Korea, who pointed this out, that she is just the consummate pro. She gives you everything you need, and she's definitely engaged in conversation with you when you're asking questions and everything like that. Most fighters, I think a lot of fighters are, but to a higher degree, I noticed it with her when I was speaking to her. So really like her. But I will say this matchup, it's not super appealing to me. It's fine. Yeah. I think it could produce potentially a really good submission from Dern, that's where the appeal is. But if it ends up being 5 rounds of them kickboxing, that's just not what I want.
Yeah, that's true. Did I tell you my Mackenzie Dern story from when I was in Vegas?
No.
This past July?
No.
So it wasn't really a Mackenzie Dern story, but she was involved. Okay. So I am at the UFC X, which is the fan expo that UFC puts on during International Fight Week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm walking around. I ran into a bunch of fighters. I ran into Jessica Andrade. I ran into Charles Oliveira. And I looked up on stage and I see Glover Teixeira and Joanna Jędrzejczyk signing autographs and everything. It was cool. So I'm walking past and I look over and I'm like, oh, that's Mackenzie Dern, just standing there, taking pictures with fans and everything. And there's a line for her. So I'm like, all right, the line's not that long. So I get in line. I know some people in the line because we were all there for a meetup. And in the line, and we're all like, yeah, let's just get some pictures with Mackenzie Dern. It's going to be cool. And we get all the way to the front, and this woman comes by and it's like, hey, just to let you know, Mackenzie has to get out of here. Her time's up. But if you stay in this line, you'll be in the front for Chuck Liddell. And we're like, oh, that's pretty cool. So
sure.
we were standing in line. We were standing there for probably about 45 minutes. Mackenzie left probably 30 minutes prior to that. And, of course, everybody's doing hey, we want you to put me in a guillotine. We want you to put me in some sort of a choke or some sort of submission
for Mackenzie
for the picture. Yeah, Mackenzie to put them in that. And then of course there was one guy who was like, hey, I want to act like I'm trying to kiss you. And she's like, well, if you do that, I'm going to act like I'm rejecting you. And she did. He leaned in for the kiss and she would put her hands up no for the picture.
Fair.
And So she left, and like, again, everything that I saw from her mirrored what you said, which she's just a consummate professional. She was great with the fans and everything. But we're waiting in line for Chuck Liddell, and like, the line's not moving because Chuck's not there. He was up on stage prior to that doing like a thing with like a bunch of fellow legends. And we're like, all right, he's probably just going to come right off the stage and come over to here. We're sitting there in line for 45 minutes. Nobody's there at all, which is an empty little like photo backdrop and everything. And then the woman comes by. She's like, yeah, he'll be here in about an hour and a half. So you guys just hang tight. And we're like, no, we're not. Where's
the respect for your time?
Like, they gave us no heads. Like, they made it seem like, oh yeah, he's going to be right over. Like when she said like, hey, if you guys wait in line, you'll be first in line for Chuck Liddell. It's like there was no like stage reset or anything they had to do. It's just like, no, this is what. So we all got out of line. But like,
guys, listen, if you just stick around until next week, I promise he might come by.
This is his favorite Italian restaurant. If you stand outside, he might come by at some point in the next 3 months.
Ridiculous. You better just go to like Vegas, like just sit in a like a casino or something like that. Maybe he'll just happen to walk by. You probably have just as good a chance.
That's Dana White. Just stand by the blackjack.
That's true.
Tables,
that's
the high rollers.
Yeah. Go right to the blackjack high rollers. Absolutely.
But
or follow Colin Covington there because you know where he's going.
He's either going to the crab leg buffet or he's going to where Dana White is.
But yeah, so back to this fight. So I gave it a 3. You gave it a 3.5. Yeah, I feel good about a 3. I would actually go lower if anything. I'm not closer to the 3.5. I'm the other way.
I like both of these fighters though. I think that's why. Like I like Mackenzie Dern a lot. I think that especially since she started working with Jason Perillo, I think her striking has gotten a lot better.
Look, she's made leaps and bounds as a fighter in general. But you're right, 100%. Having said that, this is a co-main event to me.
That's fair.
That's
fair.
how I look at it. I'm sorry, and it's more because I expect a higher level of fight. Like when they had Mackenzie Dern and Marina Rodriguez, when they fought, I liked that one. That was like, I thought that was a better main event. Even though it ended up kind of playing out in that way, that was kind of like, maybe it was okay kickboxing. It was whatever, But I was more interested in that one going in. This one, less so. It just is what it is. But
yeah, I think that is, I'm going to stick with a 3.5. You got a 3.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess for the rest of this main card, I'm going to go to the Wikipedia page.
Well, let's do main event versus main event, main card. Yeah, I think that's probably the easier way, so we can keep it straight, right? So we got 3 here, 3.5. Bellator 286 headliner Patricio Pitbull against Adam Borics. Now, I don't know if you know much about Adam Borics.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's the one who he was the guy that really like slammed on the brakes on Aaron Pico.
Yes,
early on.
Because they terribly booked it. Like this was both a praise to Adam Borics, but also a knock on the way that Bellator and Pico's management and everybody around him failed in looking out for this kid because he was way too young to take on a guy like Borics. And yeah, he comes in and I was at that fight. That was at the Garden. I'm almost positive. And he just beat the brakes off him. It was not very close. But Borics, I mean, he's lost one fight in that time. I think it was a Darian Caldwell. And
let me see. Yeah,
Caldwell, Caldwell's a wrestler. Like that's like a tough matchup sometimes for certain guys.
But
otherwise,
Borics
looked fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I did watch his Mads Burnell fight, and he does.
And Mads Burnell, he's also someone who looks to grapple. He actually passed that test pretty well. I like this fight a lot, and part of it is that I just don't know which way it's going to go. Patricio Pitbull has been fantastic for a very long time. I have tremendous respect for him. I was a fan of his before I was covering the sport. I got to interview him the other day. I had a little bit of time with him. That was really nice. Good chatting with him. But man, I mean, I'm not making a pick here, but I'm just saying, man, this is a close fight. I don't know who's going to win it. And that alone starts to pique my interest, right? Once I don't know who's going to win and it's between top guys that I enjoy, you've got me. You got your hooks in me. I love this fight. I'm closer to a 4.5, but I'll stick with a 4.
Wow. Yeah, I was. If I could give a 4.25, I would, but I think I'm going to go with 4.
That's probably where I would be. Yeah, but
I'm going to go with a 4.
Yeah, I think we're definitely in the same range here. But this is a really good fight. This is easily the most interesting fight of the whole weekend. Not even close.
Yeah, I would agree. 100%.
So, yeah, Bellator wins the main event here. Absolutely. 100%. Let's look at the rest of the main cards here. We went down the rundown of Bellator. We don't need to run it down again. We kind of highlighted a couple of fights that were on the UFC card here, although certain of them are not on the actual main card itself. I don't think that heavyweight fight you mentioned with Olenek and Latifi is.
I'm trying to see if I can figure out what the official fight card is.
I don't think they have sorted it out. That's part of the problem.
Yeah, there's
we don't
only
know
3.
which ones are on there. Yeah, actually, we don't know if Latifi and Olenek is on the main card, but I would guess so based on everything else there.
Yeah, right. According to UFC.com, we were looking at a 3-fight main card.
Well, yeah. Well, why don't we do this? Just because it's early in the week, and even by the time people are listening to this on Tuesday, maybe it'll be sorted out. But we can take the whole card into account for this one and just say, if you're looking at like the greater whole of the fights, are there enough fights here? Are there even 3 fights on the like underneath the main event that you're like, man, these are better than what we talked about with Bellator, or more intriguing to you?
No.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But let's see. So I'm gonna construct my own main card because
okay, sure.
we don't have an official main card. We're 4 days or 5 days away.
Go for it.
All right, so I'm gonna say Olenek and Latifi is 2 veteran names. They're probably gonna be on the main event. UFC loves its heavyweight fights.
Yeah, that'll almost. I mean, for God's sake, the heavyweight fights that they'll put on the main card, if they don't do this one, like, what are they thinking?
I mean, we already know. So the other 2 that we have on the main card, according to UFC.com, are Sadiq Youssef versus Don Shainis and Randy Brown versus Francisco Trinaldo. So if I'm moving that heavyweight fight onto there, that leaves us with 1 additional fight. And I'm going to say...
I mean, my guess will be 6 fights, because they often do 6, right?
Yeah, I guess.
So I would guess... here's my bet. I think they're going to put Brendan Allen and Krzysztof Jotko on there.
Okay.
That's one guess. And then I think the other one is going to be Randy Costa and Guido Canetti at bantamweight. That's my other guess.
Mike Davis versus Borshev.
Slava
Claus, baby.
I know, but I'm sticking with my guess. I think I'm going to say Randy Costa and Guido Canetti.
I could see that. All right, I'm going to give that main card that we've constructed, our dream main card, if you will.
Yeah, this is some dream.
I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5. Yeah,
closer to a 1.5 than a 2.5. I'll tell you that.
I think a 2 is fair. And that's low. That's one of the lowest scores that we really give out on this, right?
Yeah,
that's very low. So yeah, so we're giving that a 2. What are we giving those other 3 fights on Bellator?
Actually, you know what? Screw it. I'm giving it a 1.5.
1.5. That's fine. Hey, I like it.
This is, legit one of the worst main cards.
It just isn't. Yeah, it's just not a fun looking card.
And of course, it's Dana White's going to come out afterwards if there are like 3 bangers on the card. And like, hey, this just goes to show you can't judge a card on paper.
And I'm not saying that the fights can't deliver, but this is my interest level. We're rating our interest level, and that's where it's a very different thing, right?
100%. If we're just going off the main card of Bellator,
yeah,
I'm going to give it a 4.
I'm going to go 3.5, but I like the 4. I like that.
If we're going off the whole thing, I'm probably going to give it a...
Well, sure. We don't have
I'm going to give it a 3 if we're just doing the whole card.
Yeah, but are you going to turn on YouTube to watch those because mind you, the prelims are going to be taking place concurrently with the UFC main card. So like you're unless you're going to 2-screen it, sir, you're probably not doing both.
Yeah. So I'm going to just do the main card. I'm going to give it a 4.
Yeah.
There's a lot of name value. There's a lot of good matchups on there. Archuleta versus Barzola could be a banger. Pico... he's always fun to watch. AJ McKee and Spike Carlisle. That looks like that's probably going to be the most fun fight of the night. Honestly,
it could be. I think AJ McKee's gonna run through him though. I think this is a McKee showcase.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, but
I think the most fun fight is actually going to be the main event. I really just think it's going to deliver. I think it's going to be fireworks.
How many of these fights on the Bellator main card? This is just another compare and contrast with the UFC card. How many of these fights on the Bellator main card do you have more interest in than the UFC main event?
Than the UFC main event?
So clearly the main event of Bellator you prefer over the main event of the UFC.
Yeah.
Co-main event I would imagine you are more interested in than Dern Jan.
No, not necessarily. I think I would probably still put the UFC main event as like the number 2 fight of the night for me. Yeah, I would actually. I would.
For me, I would say AJ McKee versus Spike Carlisle is more interesting to me than Mackenzie Dern versus Yan Xiaonan.
The only reason I say no, I love AJ McKee. I think he's fantastic. I think he's going to do some really fun things at 155 pounds. He could end up being the champion one day. And that's part of the reason why I don't love this one as much, is because I just don't think he needs to be fighting Spike Carlisle right now. I think he's probably beyond that. Like, you could give him a much higher step up. We were talking about the possibility of him challenging for the 155-pound belt when Patricio had it. He dropped it, of course, to open the door for his brother to potentially fight for the title, ended up winning it. So we're saying that someone who realistically could have challenged for that championship, now we're just giving Spike Carlisle? Well, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be disrespectful to Carlisle, but the point is, I think AJ McKee really ought to be challenged more heavily at this point. I don't think he would mind it.
Here is the reason I don't hate it. One, Carlisle is definitely an action fighter. And two, this is McKee's transition to 155, and this just fighting a larger guy. I think that it's going to be a kind of like, all right, show us that you can take on a more physical guy than what you were seeing at 145. And if you do, then it's off to the races.
No, that's fine. I can understand the matchmaking to the way that you've, presented it and everything, but I'm not as interested in it. Great. Good for him. I'll be much more interested the next time out when they give him what I believe will be a much more appropriate challenge.
That makes sense.
That's just that's where I sit. I'm much more interested in Mackenzie Dern. There are some implications here. There's just not a whole lot of implications except that AJ McKee, unless he loses. Otherwise, he's doing what's more or less expected. Here, Mackenzie Dern, this would be interesting if she won, because it puts her much closer to the championship. And if she loses, Yan Xiaonan looks like a very, very intriguing piece of that, greater championship picture.
Yeah, I think that for me with McKee, I just don't want to see like what we got with when Holloway went up against Poirier for the interim title, and it was just like, all right, well, Holloway had his moments, but Poirier was just so much more physical. Even though he was a 145er initially, but his body had adapted to 155 fully at that point.
But the thing is, I think what we had here was Max Holloway really is just a 145 pounder. He is. Maybe he'll go up to 155 one day, but he's pretty much going to be a 45 or fighting at 55. AJ McKee has sized out of 45. That's why he's moving up.
That's fair enough.
At this point, he's kind of too big. He could probably still get to that weight, but it's much harder. He has to put on a lot of extra weight afterward to get back to hydration. And that's a lot of the problem here. So I like the idea of him moving up, because I think this is his actual size. His frame is very big. He's got a very big frame. I think he can naturally add some more size to him at 55. And I mean, look, I don't know how big Spike Carlisle is going to be next to him in the cage, especially, but it wouldn't be surprising to me if they're very similar in size.
Let me see what the vitals are here.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, forget height and everything. I'm really thinking more about just the way they look next to each other, right?
Well, yeah,
and you don't even get a good read on that until they get into the cage, because they'll do stare downs and face offs and that kind of thing, but it doesn't look the same until they've rehydrated.
I will say that when you go to their individual Tapology pages, neither AJ McKee nor Spike Carlisle look like themselves in their profile pictures.
Would they take pictures of, did someone draw a picture?
They're just both such outdated photos.
Okay.
That it's like that. If you asked me who is this fighter, I would probably not guess AJ McKee or Spike Carlisle.
They should get one of those people who does the caricatures at the boardwalk and that kind of thing to just do all the pictures of everybody. That would be fun.
That would be fun. Or it would just be terrible, because most of those caricatures are.
Yeah, but it's something. Could it be worse than these outdated photos? I don't know.
I mean, sometimes you get some fun photos in these Tapology pages.
I guess that's true.
But yeah, I think that we've covered these two events. Is there anything else we need to talk about on the fighting side?
What I did want to ask you about is, did you hear, and then we can move over to gaming here, but did you hear that Vanderlei Silva, of course, the Pride legend, UFC, had some fantastic fights in the UFC as well. Really one of the legends of mixed martial arts, especially from the early 2000s on era, right? Did you see that his son made his amateur MMA debut over the weekend? I
did not.
He picked up a win. I didn't see the full fight, but I saw a clip of him. He was in mount. Mind you, when they're an amateur, they wear the shin guards and that kind of thing, so it's a little different. He was in mount. He was just pounding out his opponent, whoever it was, got the win. And I'm thinking to myself, and I'm like, man, look at all of these. We're going to start seeing a wave, I think, of second generation mixed martial arts fighters, because we have some. There's of course people.
We just talked about AJ McKee. Yeah,
AJ McKee is a second generation, but like his father, I knew who his father was, but a lot of people really didn't know. Just wait till we start getting the children of all the people that we actually know.
I'm just saying,
like Vanderlei Silva is one. Like I think Crow Cop's son is training, if I'm not mistaken, too. There's going to be a lot of these guys. Anderson Silva has children who compete in, I believe, kickboxing. I don't know if they've done MMA yet. But just wait until we get this flood of everybody who's like, oh yeah, I watched his dad fight. Oh, I watched his dad fight. We're getting old.
Just wait until Lil Blessed is the 145 champion in 2036.
Oh my God. Yeah, that would I'd be way too old at that point. I don't feel old right now, but that would actually age me like overnight.
We've been watching him do Fortnite dances for the past 7 years. Now it's like, all right, well, I guess this is now our reality where this kid, like, I mean, it was almost like I remember playing like the baseball video games back in the day, and like thinking about like these characters, these players that were like in the minor league systems, like when they first implemented the minor leagues in those baseball games, like MLB The Show.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being like, oh, all right, this guy's like the young prospect. And now like I look back at the players that I used to be like, oh, those are like the guys with like the high trade value because they have all this potential. They are like 20 years old. And now I look at them, it's like, oh my God, they're retired. It's like, I feel so old.
Yeah. I mean, so, I'm a Marlins fan, right, in baseball. So 2003 World Series was my senior year of high school, and just a couple years older than me was one of their best players, a young rookie that year, a guy by the name of Miguel Cabrera, who ended up going on to what will certainly be a Hall of Fame career whenever he decides to hang it up, which could be after this year, maybe not, I don't know, but yeah, that he's at that point, definitely it's like, man, there are guys who've had long, amazing careers, and they're getting to the end now, and they started when I was a senior in high school.
It really makes me feel like I'm going to be like do the Thanos snap without any kind of snap. Like my bones feel like they're going to deteriorate and just float into dust.
I'm glad you mentioned the MCU too, because the name of Vanderlei Silva's son, Thor.
Well, hopefully he went for the head. That's why he got the win.
But he did go for the head. He was hitting the head a lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, he named his son Thor before the MCU started. His kid isn't 12 years old, right? So he was ahead of the game.
Though maybe, I mean, Thor has been around since Norse mythology, so
I'm not familiar. I don't know anything about that.
It's not like Chris Hemsworth is the first representation of Thor.
Yes, he is.
All right. Gaming time?
I believe there is a little bit more MCU kind of tie-in, right? I think we're going to segue over to gaming
not
here. Not
necessarily MCU.
But it's Marvel.
Yeah.
Because it existed before MCU.
Yeah. So EA, you may be familiar with this company.
Not familiar.
EA Motive.
I know those letters. They're good vowels.
EA Motive has a studio, or it's a studio that is founded by Jade Raymond, who I don't think works there any longer. But they worked on like Star Wars Squadrons and a couple other games, and they announced they're working on an Iron Man video game. And
interesting.
They have, it's the second big AAA Marvel game that has been announced in the last month. Because you may recall that we were talking about the Captain America Black Panther game a couple weeks ago.
The World War II era one.
Yeah,
correct?
World War II era. This is, all we know about this is it is a single-player, third-person action game.
Well, I hope it's a Vietnam era. I hope they're just going for wars and everything. Because if you recall, Iron Man originally created his suit while being captured, I believe, by the Viet Cong.
Oh, really?
If I'm not mistaken, it was during. I could be wrong here. I'm not a student of Marvel, but I could swear that I've read that before.
I mean, I'm sure it was
during that war.
I mean, it's like how like the MCU is going to have to find they did it for Iron Man in the first movie, where it was like, all right, he was captured in Afghanistan.
Right.
Now, instead, because, that's modern era, like they're going to have to probably come up with a different origin story for like Magneto, because, his origin story was that he was a kid in the Holocaust. And now
I've had that thought a lot.
he would be way too old now. Like, unless you're actually getting Ian McKellen back, I don't think they're going to do that.
Probably not necessary. Yeah.
but yeah, like I think that they're gonna have to probably come up with a different origin story for Magneto, or at least a more recent situation that he can be in, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, EA motive, that's all we know, unfortunately, is that it's a ways away too, because they're saying they're in pre-production right now.
All right, we got a little time.
Yeah, I would say 2024 is the earliest we're going to see this game in terms of release. I mean, I would say next summer maybe we see some footage of it, but like I would say it's a 2024 release if I had to guess, if not later. But
okay.
Yeah. But this is actually a big piece of information here, buried deep into the press release, because I wrote this story up on Game Informer. EA said this is the first of several games to come from a new partnership between them and Marvel.
Okay.
So Marvel is, I think they're going to see, like, we've had a bunch of games with like Marvel's Avengers. We had Guardians of the Galaxy, which ended up very good. Those ended
from
up
Square Enix, of course.
Yeah, both of those were from Square Enix.
I did like that game.
Obviously Insomniac and Sony have been doing the Spider-Man games, which are incredible.
Yeah.
And I intentionally did not say amazing for that one. And then they
lean in.
I mean, there's a bunch of adjectives that we've gotten for these different characters.
Spectacular.
Yeah, Iron Man is invincible,
That's
apparently. Right. But yeah, this is something that I think Marvel is really embracing. They're like, all right, well, AAA development, we just need to like hopefully they've realized they need to have this quality control, because we've seen what happens when we don't have quality control, when we try to monetize things too much, whether you're talking Marvel's Avengers or Marvel Strike Force, which is a game I play multiple times a day, every single day. I'm coming up on 1,800 days logging in. It's just the quality of Marvel Strike Force is just absolute garbage at this point. I'm not even.
Well, good thing you're wasting so much time on something you hate.
It's just the IP I love and the core gameplay I love, but the quality of that game has just gone downhill so much. You'll see me tweet about it. I feel like I tweet too much about it at times, because it's just like I know that a lot of people who follow me don't play it, but at the same time, it's like, dude, it's absurd to me that Marvel does allow a game that uses its intellectual property to be such low quality. I know it makes a ton of money, but like that's all you can say about that game. Like the core gameplay is a lot of fun. The upgrading of the heroes is a lot of fun, but like right now there are like the known issues log. If you go to their website, the known issues log is longer than any article I've ever written. I mean, that's not true, as I've written these cover stories, but yes, it's a super long article if you go onto like the Marvel Strike Force website and look at their known issues.
Yeah, well, you're not selling me on starting that game.
No, I would. Honestly, if anybody asked me if they should play Marvel Strike Force, I would tell them no.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I enjoy it, but it is part sunk cost fallacy. I will fully acknowledge that.
Okay,
but I do still have fun with it. Like I just beat like one of the pieces of like post game content, or not post game, I guess end game content, which is the
end game. Oh, there's your pun.
I just unlocked Dormammu, which is fun. But yeah, like it's just they designed the game to frustrate players into spending money, and as long as you go in knowing that, then. And knowing that you're not going to get a quality product because their quality assurance is seemingly either non-existent or incompetent, you are going to you're going to have a turn-based combat system with Marvel characters. But all that to say is I'm hoping that Marvel has realized somewhere along the line that, between Marvel's Avengers and Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, because Avengers obviously did not meet that mark of quality that a lot of people were wanting. Guardians of the Galaxy, I think a lot of people slept on because, it's another Marvel game from Square Enix. And then it came out and everybody's like, oh, this game's actually really good. It won a game award for like narrative. And like, a lot of people said that story was incredible. And
I'll tell you something. Here's another thing I have an issue with the way they handled Guardians of the Galaxy was the timing. I think it came out at a strange time in the sense that not just like not when it released in the year. I want to say it was like September or something like that last year, which is fine. I mean, it's in the window where right now is when things start to heat up, right? So it's okay to do it then. But I'm speaking more specifically to the way that they can tie it into the other Marvel type of stuff, right? Like we haven't had a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. When did 2 come out?
It was like 8 years ago, 7 years
ago. It wasn't
ago.
that long, but it was a while ago, right? And then the next Guardians, it's in the works, right? When does it come out next year?
I believe so, yes. Or yeah, but I mean, it's like, what are you going to do though?
The point is, maybe you target this game to kind of come out roughly around that time where the fever of the property is more high. Even if it's not the same, it's not a tie-in. I know I played the game. I know it's not a tie-in. There's no Chris Pratt. It's all different. But the idea that you're at least putting this product out roughly around the same time, like I'll give you a good example. Batman Arkham Asylum, when it came out, it was right in the shadow of the Dark Knight.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very, very peak, right? It could ride the coattails. Oh, it's also Batman, to be fair, but at the same time, Batman had no legacy of any sort of quality video games up to this point. It was like the idea that we were going to get a good Batman game was still kind of like a fantasy at this point. And now we have this amazing trilogy. And you can say what you want about the third one, but I think the first two are absolutely amazing games. Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. City probably.
I love Arkham Knight,
and I love it too. I actually do, but I know people. There's people especially who don't love the Batmobile focused stuff. Right, that was the thing that I got a lot of criticism for from friends. But just the idea that this game was coming out roughly around the time where the pitch was higher for it, and I think the timing of this could have been done a lot better, and it could have probably been more successful commercially. It wouldn't have changed the way it was, critically, because again, like you're saying, it was lauded. I think it was a really excellent game. I think everybody I know who's actually played it really enjoyed it. So I think there's something to be said about putting it out roughly around that time. Someone like Iron Man, you could put that out roughly any time because Iron Man transcended a different level, right? It's improbably Iron Man is like almost the number one Marvel superhero. It's not. It's Spider-Man, but it got very close to that point, and I think that was amazing.
I mean, he's up there now with the likes of Spider-Man and Wolverine in terms
Captain
of like
America.
I would say he's much more popular than Captain America, honestly.
But the idea of that 15 years ago would have been absurd.
Absolutely, yeah. But we've got some other like kind of crossover media stuff to talk about.
Yeah. You've pointed out a few things. What do we got?
So Ted Lasso.
I don't watch Ted Lasso, but I know you're a big fan.
It is a terrific show. One of my favorite shows, probably of the last 10 years, honestly.
Is it a comedy? Is it what is it? Because I'm going to sound like a noob.
Largely a comedy about starring Jason Sudeikis, who is a college football coach, like American football.
Right, and he becomes a soccer coach.
And he becomes a soccer coach in England for this Premier League team.
I'm gonna take a stab in the dark. He thinks it's a regular football team and it's the other type of football.
Incorrect.
Okay.
He knows what it is going in.
You don't have to tell me, but that was just my guess.
But no, so he gets this job and he goes over and of course everybody's like, you don't know anything about this game, da-da-da.
That's like me coaching my kids soccer right now.
But it ends up being like, a very, very, very funny show, very heartfelt show. I mean, it's definitely one of those shows that has like it's like at first you don't really like care that much about the characters, but by the end of the first season you care about almost every single character.
Fascinating. I'll keep that one in mind. I'll put that somewhere in the queue now,
it's a breezy watch. It's only 2 seasons so far, and it's every episode I found is really good.
Roughly half hour,
I think,
or more like close to an hour.
I think it's the half-hour format.
Okay,
but I mean, it's been a year and a half since I've watched it because that's when the last season ended. But
anyway, you're bringing it up for a reason. What do we got?
Ted Lasso and his team are coming to FIFA, which comes out this week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can have Ted Lasso as like your manager on the sideline. His coach, Coach Beard, is also in it. And then you have a bunch of the players are also in it. Roy Kent, Jamie Tart, I forget the guy's first name, but his last name is Obisanya because I always remember that because of Adesanya.
Sure.
And I believe he's also Nigerian. And then there's Denny Rojas is in it. So there's a bunch of really awesome, recognizable characters from the show that you can add to your team. And
I guess that's fun, sure.
They also have their stadium. I don't think they're going to have their chants because that would bump the ESRB up from everyone to mature, I bet.
Fair.
But yeah, so that's something that actually gets me wanting to check out this year's FIFA. I'm not a big soccer fan, but I love that show.
It's just a little nuggets in life, I guess you're looking for, right?
Yeah, exactly. We also know when we're going to see the first footage of the Mario movie.
Okay.
New York Comic-Con.
Yeah. We were talking about that actually.
Yeah,
on my appearance on your podcast.
Yeah, All Things Nintendo. Scott Fontana was my guest last week.
I hope everybody got to check that out, because first off, you should be listening to Brian's show every week. All Things Nintendo is a really good show. But especially if you're only going to listen to one episode, you should listen to the greatest episode that he's ever had, where I was his guest just the other day.
Yes.
Transcend. I think we got some serious praise for that one. There were some people saying like I might actually be up for awards considerations. And I felt that was really special.
You know, they say latest and greatest as a term, and I think that applies to that episode. It was both the latest and the greatest.
It was 100% the latest.
So we're getting. We talked about this on that show,
yes.
The Mario movie. We've been waiting to hear what Chris Pratt sounds like as Mario. It sounds as though we'll finally get that at New York Comic-Con this coming month in October. But we also got a release date for when that movie is hitting theaters. That is April 7th.
Okay.
So yeah, just a little bit of news there. We don't know much else, but Nintendo did tweet that out that we're going to get our first look, or I guess listen to it as well in New York Comic-Con. So
hey, I got it.
Cyberpunk. You played that recently.
I played that recently.
There's a show called Cyberpunk Edge Runners, I believe it is called. Yes,
it's a show.
The name. It's on Netflix. It's an anime. It's anime.
Okay, anime. Okay, that makes sense.
And people are having a blast with that show. People are tweeting the praises of it.
So it's already out, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I
came out earlier this month.
It was upcoming.
No, it's out now. And apparently Cyberpunk 2077 is a lot of people are watching the show, enjoying it thoroughly, and then going back and playing Cyberpunk 2077 and saying, hey, this game's actually pretty good. It's getting like a second life out of this show. And now that not all the problems, but a lot of the problems have been fixed since launch that made that such a disastrous launch.
People as I was talking about, yeah.
People are actually jumping back in and saying this game actually is pretty good. And it's interesting to see how that is boosting. I mean, it's almost like how when The Witcher 3 or the Witcher Netflix show came out, The Witcher 3 became like the top selling game all of a sudden across all the platforms. And this is kind of like one of those situations where
there's your synergy, right?
Yeah. So yeah,
I'm actually, as you speak, I am adding Cyberpunk Edge Runners to my list because I might as well just check it out.
And
I didn't love, like, as you know, I spoke about this on the show for a little while when I was playing it. I didn't love the game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to stop short of saying I enjoyed it, but I also don't want to say I didn't enjoy it. It was just kind of like, yeah, I played it. That was a game I was playing for a little while, and then I was kind of out. But I know a lot of people, when they finally did get to play the product that was finally finished, they did find that they enjoyed it. And I think you said you thought you liked it enough even when you played it through some of the problems, right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't love the end of the story, but
I didn't love the end of my story either. I didn't get a great ending.
But I will say that overall, I had a pretty good time with the game, and I fought through a lot of bad glitches. But
as we spoke of,
again,
yeah.
This was when the game first came out. Now I actually do want to go back. I reinstalled it onto my Xbox because now there's the new gen versions that are out. They've fixed a lot of the bugs. I want to go back and see what it's like in the year of our Lord 2022.
Yeah.
And but yeah,
if you get to it in the year of our Lord 2022,
it will not be this
coming.
year.
Yeah,
it will not be this year. But I want to see what it's like next year. Then,
sure.
So the last one that we want to touch on, I talked about The Witcher on Netflix. We now know that The Witcher season 3 is coming to Netflix next summer, and then there is a show, Witcher Blood Origin, coming out this Christmas on Netflix.
And what is that?
It is I'm happy you asked, Scott, because I don't know either. I brought the Wikipedia page. The Wikipedia page says, set 1,200 years before the events of the television series, Blood Origin will depict the creation of the first Witcher, as well as the events leading to the conjunction of the spheres. It will also explore the ancient elven civilization before its demise. But it's a 4-episode miniseries coming to Netflix.
Okay. Is it live action?
Who knows? Who knows?
We will find out in our own time.
I mean, I would imagine, right?
We'll know on Christmas for sure.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, who knows?
Okay. I think I've mentioned this before on the show, but I asked Jan Blachowicz, former UFC champion, man of Poland, loves his fantasy fiction, especially. I asked him, because of course The Witcher is a Polish property, comes
Mhm.
from Polish mythology, all this kind of thing. I asked him what did he think of the Netflix show, and he said it made him cry. He hated it. he hated it so badly. Now I can't imagine he watched it and he was literally sitting there sobbing to himself. Why did they do this? But nonetheless, he said, you can play the games, you read the books, don't watch the show. That was his endorsement.
That makes me very sad that made Jan Blachowicz cry. Like I don't want anything to make Jan Blachowicz cry. He seems like such a cool guy.
I feel like he might have been embellishing a little bit, but what he did mean is that he was very displeased.
Like that was like when
and you don't want this man displeased. He's a big man.
Like when Jan
carries
Blachowicz
around a piece of rope from a guy who hanged himself in the woods or something like that, which is very morbid, but also very. I don't know if it's endearing, but very. I don't know. Fascinating, I guess.
Fascinating is a good word. Yeah, like when Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira fought, I was like, I just hope they both have a fun time because I like these guys both so much. But by the way, Blood Origin is an anime.
Okay. That's good that we got that answer. Yeah. And that makes sense because I did watch, and I forget the name of it, but I did watch another anime from The Witcher on Netflix.
Oh, yeah. I forgot that.
I forget the name of it.
By the way,
off the top of my head, but I did watch that one.
Coming in hot. We got some extra news here.
Ooh.
E3. Literally this very minute announced how it's handling this year's show.
What they're having this year's show?
So
that's also news to me. Go on.
So partner digital events and showcases will precede the show starting June 11th.
Hey, it's my birthday.
Hey, and then Los Angeles Convention Center for a 4-day expo from Tuesday, June 13th to Friday, June 16th. And E3 business days will take place June 13th through the 15th with general public welcome on the 15th and the 16th.
All right.
And then certain parts of it will be reserved for industry professionals, including developers, publishers, distributors, and gaming media.
Hey, that's you.
And it is. And then when consumers join the celebration on June 15th, spectacular booths and a dedicated theater offering deep dive looks at highly anticipated titles await. All right.
Huzzah.
So yeah, that is literally, and they're partnering with a different company this time to do it. It's Reed Pop who does the PAXs.
Okay.
So
the reports of E3's death were greatly exaggerated.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit exaggerated. All right. We'll see how it actually comes together, and we'll see if Summer Game Fest does its thing alongside it. But yeah, and then the other last little piece of gaming news, I guess, that we can talk about here is that apparently maybe they caught the GTA 6 hacker.
Yeah.
So the London police...
Is it going to be the same way as when Dana caught the guy who was streaming, or was going to catch the guy who was streaming?
Well, this was the London police tweeting this.
I trust them just a little more.
Yeah, more than Dana White saying,
"Hey, in terms of
we found one we found one illegal streamer.
We found him. We caught him, shut him down. Yeah,
he's out here telling everybody to buy the pay-per-view now."
The weirdest freaking thing. Oh my God, that was so bizarre.
And like nobody knows who this guy is. Like, all right, yeah, where's he telling us? I don't know. It's somewhere out there. So yeah, the London police,
but the GTA 6 hacker,
tweeted on the evening of Thursday, the 22nd of September, 2022. The City of London police arrested a 17-year-old in Oxfordshire on suspicion of hacking as part of an investigation by the NCA UK's National Cybercrime Unit. He remains in police custody. And then the Desk, which is a outlet, said that it reported that it is somebody that they are looking into as a person or a suspect. It was suspected 17-year-old GTA hacker. It had previously been reported the FBI was also likely looking into the recent hacks at Uber and Rockstar Games. So it's
part of a collective, one would assume, right?
Yeah, it seems like this is the guy that they at least have penned to be the GTA hacker. And I believe we talked about this last time. It's not a good look for him.
No.
It's not something that he probably wants to be known for at this point in time now.
Guys, just hack responsibly, okay?
Yeah, hack in the way that it's going to get you hired by the company, not in the way that's going to get you arrested,
thrown in prison.
Yeah.
it's not fun. Like I mean, I've never been to prison, but I'm going to assume it's not the best place to be because most people try to avoid it.
That is true. But I think that's all the gaming news that we really have. Is there anything else that you want to talk about right now?
I mean, before we close out, we can just kind of just check in on what everybody's been playing. Have you been playing anything? You know what? I'm going to rephrase that question. Is there anything you've been playing that you can even mention?
Nope.
All right.
2 games,
that's it for Brian.
Both are under embargo. But yeah, maybe next week I'll be able to talk about them.
Well, that would be fun. I mean, we all look forward to that because obviously you've got the inside track with these things. It's very fascinating, But man, when you sit there and say, "Oh, can't talk about it," I'm like, "Well, F you, buddy."
I mean, I did fire up Madden very briefly this week.
Okay, all right.
Just to
That
play
counts.
a couple games. But yeah. I mean, there's nothing really to say about that. It's fine.
It's a football video game.
It is.
It's the football video game.
I've been watching some football, so it's like I can't watch my team for shit. So it's like I might as well watch the Vikings and whatever the nationally broadcast game is.
Can I just say that I'm so thankful for your quarterback because he is carrying my fantasy football league in the MMA media league that I'm in. So I drafted Lamar Jackson, and 2 weeks in a row he's got me at least 40 points. Which, if you don't play fantasy football,
it's a lot.
It's a lot. That's like double what you would want from a really solid week.
Yeah, it's a really good week.
And in fact, he's done it 2 weeks in a row. Is it's borderline unprecedented.
He's also carrying the Ravens, so
he is. I mean, sure, it kind of works out that way. They of course lost last week, but the Dolphins, who beat them in a shootout, the Dolphins look fantastic too. They're 3-0 now.
Wow.
Not that we need to turn this into a football conversation. But I wanted to give a shout out to your quarterback. Your team's
I can't keep up with this because the stupid NFL broadcast rights. I've ranted about this before, but it's driving me insane. I'm so happy that the NFL has come out and said they're not going to renew with DirecTV and they're going to do something else for Sunday Ticket. Just give it to me something else.
They're gonna 100%. You got to think that they're going to offer the same thing all the other leagues do, which is the ability to just subscribe to your team.
That's all I want. It's
going to happen.
Unless Amazon throws an ungodly amount of money at them.
Or Apple. I've heard Apple's in the mix.
I'm down for either of those. I subscribe to both Apple TV Plus and Amazon Prime. So
keep your eye on, I'm going to shout out my colleague at the New York Post. Keep your eye on Andrew Marchand, who is our sports media reporter. And he's always kind of glued in and plugged in, I should say, to everything that's happening there. So keep your eye on him. He's really good follow for this kind of thing.
All right. Well, I will keep my eyes on his feed because I'm watching this situation play out with great interest.
I think we all are, right? Football fans especially.
So what are you playing?
So I didn't have I actually played a little bit more than I thought I would this week. I got to play some Control.
Okay.
So I think I'm through 4 missions now out of 10 or 11. I like to look ahead and be like, I don't want to know what happens ahead. I don't like spoilers, but I'm like, all right, how long am I in this for? How far along am I percentage wise? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love games that will give you the percentage. So like I'll go to the stats and be like, how far am I? All right, that's good. But yeah, so I would say right now I'm about 40% in the way through Control. And I think I'm gonna try this week to see if I can like make real headway, maybe even beat it. We'll see how that works out because I've still got some things to work on. But yeah, so Control, played a little bit of NBA 2K23 finally. I was very excited to see that there is a Jordan Challenges mode.
Yeah, so
I'm gonna play that for my kids and teach them who Michael Jordan is.
So I haven't played it yet. I mean, I fired it up and played just like one exhibition game, but I haven't played like the cool modes. But the new modes that they do have in NBA 2K23 sound really awesome. So there's the Jordan Challenge, I believe it's called, and then there's the My NBA Eras, where
that's also interesting. That's up my alley.
So yeah, Jordan Challenge is like basically you try to recreate iconic moments from Michael Jordan's career, which sounds awesome. And then
they
NBA
had it.
Eras,
I want to say they had it actually in like 2K11 or something like that. But that's actually, if you can believe it, I didn't play 2K like not in my life, but like basically never until I want to say like 2K13, 14.
Wow,
I was like an NBA Live kid growing up. I was a little weird.
Well,
Live was the thing for a little while. I had brand loyalty to it
for a little while, but yeah, once 2K stepped onto the court, no pun intended. Well, I guess a little bit pun intended, but
that was very much pun intended.
Once NBA 2K stepped onto the gridiron, stepped onto the pitch. There we go. We'll do other sports. Stepped into the octagon.
This makes more sense. Go on.
Once NBA 2K23 stepped onto the tennis court, they
hit a home run. And
yeah, they wiped the floor. They touchdown celebrated all over NBA Live.
After scoring on a wrister.
Yeah, after scoring after hitting an ace. There we go. Hole in one, baby.
We've just
We've run out of gas. I woke up very early today. I'm kind of loopy. The coffee that I got was not strong enough, evidently, by this episode.
I did also find time. My kids love it. They demand that I play. They don't demand, but they really love me to play. Hot Wheels Unleashed.
They're holding a frying pan to your head, saying, "Dad, play this, or we're hitting you in the head with this frying pan."
Well, I mean, my youngest, who's the one who really makes the push for it, he kind of just climbs all over me and just kind of. So it's not that far off from being hit from a frying pan. Sometimes he actually kicked me in the face early this morning.
Just running up your pant leg?
A little bit. I mean, not up the pant leg, but he'll just go on my head sometimes. It's like, get off my head. It's like 35 pounds. It's a lot.
Get those.
I'll play a little bit of that for them. And of course, in the lead up to my appearance, my Academy Award nominated appearance on your show, I played just a little bit more Broforce just to refresh myself.
Yeah,
a game that I really like.
I mean, we can talk a little bit about what that is, even though we talked about it on All Things Nintendo. But for people who listen to this show,
it's not a new game, but
it came out in like 2015, I think, on PC.
I believe you were saying 2015 was when it hit like Steam, right?
Yeah, that was its first
consoles, and then it got to Switch in 2018. I think I was playing it on. I probably started playing it on my PS4 roughly around that time because it was one of the free games of the month kind of thing, and I claim all of them. But yeah. It's a really fun game. What console do you have it for? You have it, right?
I have it on...
Because you reviewed it.
Yeah, I reviewed it on PC.
Okay.
So I have it in my Steam account. I think I did claim the PS Plus free game when it was available on that. But then I did buy it on Switch when it was $3.74, which this was
just
not
the other day?
No, I bought this a long time ago.
Oh,
actually,
okay. But
Switch, because
it tends to go down, right?
Yeah, it's been up and down, but like normally it's like $15, but it was like $4 the other day.
Yeah.
And every once in a while I'll see that, I'll be like, oh wow, it's only $4. Let me buy it. And I'm like, oh wait, I already own it on Switch.
Oh, that's good. At least
it's a good game. It's a good game to have on the go. But yeah, it's like a 2D kind of pixelated side-scrolling shooter that is like starring unlicensed versions of your favorite 80s and 90s action heroes.
Indiana Brones, Ram Bro, they all have bro in the name, even
Double
the
Bro
ladies,
7.
because they're we have Ripley, who is I believe is Rip Bro.
I don't know. She was added post-launch after I reviewed it, so I didn't know. I didn't keep up with like all the characters that were added.
Okay.
But
they've added so many. We should play it if you have it on PS4. That's a game we could play because we could dip into that for like 15 minutes and then be done.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely
easy. That's hitting it up and dip out.
But I do like that. I mentioned this on All Things Nintendo, but I do like that every single stage ends with you jumping onto the ladder of a helicopter that's just conveniently hovering at the end of the stage, and then you fly away while the stage explodes.
Yes, but also while that is happening, or right before that's happening, to trigger that, you have to kill the devil, who is one of the terrorists.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. And you're just fighting terrorists. It's the terrorists. It's very much like it plays up the broism and like the over machismo of like, Commando and Predator and basically any movie that Arnold Schwarzenegger was in the 80s.
Or
it plays it up to the point of parody and satire. And it's a lot of fun.
Pretty much any action movie just over the top that you could think of from like the late 70s all the way to like the mid 90s.
I'm thinking about it now, and like a significant number of the characters in the game are based on roles either from Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone.
Oh yeah.
But there's no Rocky because Rocky is not that kind of thing.
That would be hilarious though if you could run through as a boxer.
That'd be interesting. Yeah.
Who would make this? We'll close on this.
Sure.
Semi-related to Broforce. Who would make the better James Bond? Sylvester Stallone or Arnold Schwarzenegger?
By the way, he's double bro 7. I just need to put that in there. So what were the characters again? Are the actors again?
You have to cast the next James Bond, but only 2 actors are available. Sylvester Stallone or Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, God. for James Bond.
And we're talking like he's going to have to play it straight, similar to the way that other actors have portrayed James Bond. This isn't going to be like, all right, this is Arnold Schwarzenegger's rendition of James Bond. They have to try their best to capture the same level of suaveness and like smoothness and like, British secret agent that those other actors, that Pierce Brosnan and Sean Connery brought to the table.
Okay. Then now that you've explained it out, I have a 100% confident answer. It is Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Really?
Oh, not even close. We're talking about he's got a little more suaveness to him, I think, than Sly does. I think of movies like True Lies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a little bit of that in there. And I think he's someone who, look, he obviously, English, number one, is not his first language. Number two, he does still have an accent, right? But I do think he actually can be a very like gripping talker, right? We've seen him do these kind of videos, especially during the pandemic, where he's kind of speaking authoritatively. He's very good at kind of explaining that. And I think there's some sort of command of your attention that I think is different from Sylvester Stallone. So I feel very good about that one. What about you?
I'm going to go. So you made a good point there with like how articulate he is when he's just like singularly focused on delivering a line, right?
Sure.
Sylvester Stallone, I think, has slightly more acting chops, though.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree.
He is amazing.
But also, we're not necessarily looking for that from James Bond.
Yeah.
It's not like the peak thing.
All right. Who has to play a fighter in a movie? Steven Seagal or Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about acting, then it's got to be Jean-Claude Van Damme. Because the man is actually like, I think when he wants to act, he can actually be okay.
And do you think he plays George St. Pierre? Is that the fighter he portrays?
That would be fascinating if we could age him down. But now
we're getting
talking
off
about
the rails.
Who would be the better fighter in real life. Obviously, it's Sensei Seagal because he's teaching moves to Anderson Silva, to Lyoto Machida. I mean, where would these fighters be without Sensei Seagal?
And also,
let's face it,
isn't Jean-Claude Van Damme? Does he actually he's just a dancer, right? Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I'm almost positive he's had like kickboxing matches.
I mean, now he might have, but like I remember initially he was just like I think he just danced ballet, didn't he?
I'm going to pull up his information right now because I am curious about this, what his background was. I mean, he began martial arts at the age of 10, Shotoken Karate, which is just like actually Lyoto Machida. That was his kickboxing, or his black belt in karate by 18. Yeah, at age 16, he took up ballet, like you mentioned. But before then, he was already a martial artist, a practitioner of the martial arts. Took up Taekwondo, Muay Thai later on. I mean, I think he had ballet in his back pocket, but he was doing karate and all this stuff for a very long time.
All right,
here we go. Actually, right here, age of 15, Van Damme started his competitive karate career in Belgium from 1976 to 1980. Van Damme compiled. This is all Wikipedia, so take it for what it is. But compiled a record of 44 victories and 4 defeats in tournaments and non-tournament semi-contact matches. That's pretty good. I don't know what the Belgian karate scene was 10 years before I was born, but it sounds like he did okay.
All right. Well, I stand corrected.
But then again, Sensei Seagal, once again, he honestly, he's almost like the godfather of modern martial arts. Like, where would we be without the front kick that he, of course, invented?
I am going JCVD just because Bloodsport is maybe my favorite martial arts movie of all time.
It's a great martial arts movie, and in a lot of ways, an inspiration for the UFC.
It's just an amazing movie, and it's one of the inspirations for Mortal Kombat as well.
And on that note, I think it's probably time to wrap it up, right? We got to bring this home here. So
we've rambled long enough.
Yeah, absolutely, right? We could go on forever. If you like the show, and I hope you do, make sure you subscribe. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. You're probably listening on one of those platforms. Tell everybody where to find us. Come on. We got to spread the word. And while you're at it, would you kindly follow our social handles at Brian P. Shea and at Scott_Fontana on Twitter and Instagram.
And of course, you can always reach us with questions, feedback, topics you'd like to hear about, or just letting us know what you're hyped about at groundandpwnedpod@gmail.com or at groundandpwned on Twitter. Until next time, enjoy the fights, enjoy the games. We will talk to you next week.